Welcome to KRA's The Hub, the official podcast of KRA Corporation. And now get ready to hear workforce topics and trends you need to know on the go.
Hello and welcome back to KRA's The Hub. Of course, with me, or I'm with him, Jonathan Overall, Director of Workforce Operations for KRA. Our guest today is Dr. Christopher Laney, Director of Government Affairs and Workforce Strategy for Lightcast. And we're going to be talking about workforce trends, labor force, labor market, and more. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you. Excited
Great to be with you as always, Doug.
Thank you.
So, Chris, we're excited, and thank you again for joining the Hub podcast here today. I'm excited about today's topic, bridging the gap in today's labor force. It's a very relevant topic today. But before we begin, can you give us a little bit of a background about yourself and the work that you do with Lightcast?
Yeah, excited to be here again. Thank you for the opportunity to join you. I've been at Lightcast now about 3 years, and a lot of the things that we work on at Lightcast is really about how do we help inform businesses, educational institutions, government entities, or local nonprofits around using labor market data to make better, more informed decisions as they are building strategy about, one, the talent shortage, or working on sector strategies, trying to increase labor force participation within a community, working on specifically some diversity initiatives around race, age, and gender, or foreign-born populations. These are the kinds of things that we try to use our data and work on projects with our clients on. I got into this work. Everybody has that career pathway right into workforce development, obviously, but I fell into it and I worked for a local workforce board for about 4 years, working on legislative priorities, talent pipeline strategies. And I just fell in love with this work that we do every day, workforce development, this intersection between businesses, government, nonprofits, education. And it just was such a fit for me to be able to jump over to Lightcast, where we get to work on these at such a macro level, whether it's here in the United States or even globally.
Thank you so much, Chris. And so to get into it, we still hear a lot about the labor shortage. I think you'd have to be living under a rock to not everywhere you go, we're experiencing that labor shortage and the skills gap, and employers are still struggling to find qualified workers. Can you say a little bit about what are we seeing in the labor market and also around the skills gap?
Yeah, I think one, defining what a skills gap is, that first goal or task. I think there's this notion among employers that they're still looking for that perfect candidate. That if I list 15 skills on a job posting, I'm going to find that candidate with 12 to 15 skills to meet that perfect fit for that occupation they're trying to fill. That's just not going to happen anymore. Here we are in a massive talent shortage that is not going away anytime soon. And if you can find a candidate that has 40, 50% of the skills and they're a perfect cultural fit and they are willing to learn and you can train them, grab that person, because that's the person that you need, which is a great opportunity for the workforce system because it's our job to help with upskilling, right? And so if you're working with an employer and they say, I found this candidate, I really like them, they have a lot of the skills we need, but they really need help in X, Y, and Z, then great. How can we partner with the workforce systems to ensure that we're helping them with training and upskilling those specific skills for that employer? So yeah, and what we're seeing in the labor market is a shortage, right? Again, no one's living under the rock. There's a shortage. But when it comes to the specific skill, and we often talk about what it takes to build out a skills-based economy, and that's easier said than done. And we can get into that a little bit further. But if for employers, got that candidate and they have half of those skills, jump on them and hire them because you can teach them the rest.
Chris, I think if there's anything that the pandemic taught us, it's how to respond and be resilient in an uncertain environment. You recently, in a LinkedIn post, talked about expecting the unexpected. Can you help us make sense of some of the trends that you're seeing in the labor market and really what that means for the workforce?
Yeah, I think I was alluding to the latest jobs report. And so every month when JOLTS comes out, or the monthly employment situation, i.e. the jobs report, our team of economists dives into that report. We go live within 30 minutes of that report and we talk about what we're seeing in the data. What's funny is every time before the report comes out, our team is discussing our own predictions. We're like, this is how many job openings are we going to have, or where is unemployment going to be? And we're not the only ones doing that, right? In the media, that's exactly what they do. The day before, they're saying, this is what we're expecting. We're going to add 250,000 jobs to the economy. And in the last jobs report, we were running down the list of all the things that we were predicting. And literally none of them came to fruition. We're going to add 250,000 or 180,000 jobs. We added 250,000. Unemployment's going to go up to 3.7%. It stayed at 3.4%. We see the layoffs in the labor market every day, especially in the tech sector. And we assume that in those industries, we're going to see a drop because of all the employer layoffs. Yet we saw increases in both of the two industries that primarily have all the tech jobs in them. We look at wages, and we have been predicting wages are going to either go static or they're going to start to drop with inflation being so high. Nope, wages continuously went up. And so this idea to expect the unexpected was, we can sit here and make predictions, which, by the way, we've been doing for years. We're making predictions of what's going to happen in the labor market, but all those past historic cycles that we're used to seeing the economy when things like inflation gets out of control or GDP is dropping, usually there's an effect that happens in the labor market, and those are just not happening. And we talk about often where there was less job openings. We're starting to see that happening. So clearly the labor market is responding. And yes, that may be the case. But before the pandemic, we had record high job openings. That's 7 million job openings in February of 2020. Today, we still have almost 10 million job openings. And so, yes, it may have decreased from 13 million, but we still have a massive amount of job openings. And so, yes, expect the unexpected, because I don't think anyone can rightly make the right predictions right now.
Speaking of expecting the unexpected, we're in this interesting time where I know there's a lot of concern about going into a recession. And normally that would mean a cooling off of the labor market. But we're also seeing that there's lots of unfilled jobs, as you were saying. Again, asking you to put on your take out your crystal ball. And I know to qualify as what you just said, but do you think we'll eventually see a cooling of the job market?
We use that language all the time. We say, are we seeing the cooling in the job market? I think in the last 3 or 4 lives that we've done, one of the questions I always ask to our economists, are we seeing a cooling? Because we're seeing job openings drop when it comes to JOLTS. And then we're seeing, in terms of how many jobs we're creating, yes, we've created less jobs than we did a year ago, but there's still 250,000 jobs we're creating in our economy. And so, yes, we have this possible recession. And in the past, just like I was just mentioning, there are these indicators that when a recession is approaching, then we have these economic indicators, i.e. in the labor market, that we're used to seeing. We're used to seeing unemployment increase. We're used to seeing less job openings. We're used to seeing more layoffs. These are all factors that we're used to seeing, but we're not seeing it in this cycle. And we don't believe that we'll ever go back to seeing those cycles again. We have too many job openings with a massive labor shortage and not enough people to fill those jobs. So when we think about the layoffs, first of all, in the tech sector has been the primary one. Those layoffs that we're experiencing are from companies that hired up in massive rates during the pandemic. When we think of a tech company like Peloton, who saw increased sales at a significant rate because everybody was stuck indoors working out, so they hired up their staff, and then as they started to decrease or level off as things opened up, then they realized that's a massive workforce we don't need. And we saw that kind of play out among a lot of these major tech companies. But overall, when you look at those sectors, again, they've added jobs in this last month. And so we're not seeing what the media is really portraying, which is, oh, we lost another 100,000 jobs in the tech sector. We're adding jobs in a variety of areas. And so yes, are we seeing a cooling? Yes, we are seeing a little bit of a cooling in the sense that we have less job openings, but will we go back to 10% unemployment? Probably not. Unless something massive happens, God forbid that massive pandemic closes everything up. But we have all these employers right now who has had all these open jobs that they need to fill, and they still need to fill them. So will they create new jobs? Probably not. That's the sense of an employer cooling off. But they still have to backfill all those jobs they didn't fill over the last few years. And so I think that's the interesting part that we're at right now, is that our economy is not going to follow the common trends that we're used to over the past cycles of a recession. Our labor market is strong and it continues to be strong. And so we will see some flux, but not enough where individuals should start fearing for their jobs, because there's another job around the corner that they could probably get.
Early in our conversation, Chris, you really opened up the door talking about the role of workforce and skilling up the labor market. And there's probably some advice that you could give towards workforce professionals, areas and ways, things that they should keep in mind with some of the trends that you're seeing now economically and within the labor market. What would that advice look like to workforce professionals right now?
Yeah, I think that workforce development organizations are at an interesting time. It was written that in WIOA that they were supposed to be the convener, right? And so I think the role of the workforce system to be that convener is more important today than ever. They really need to be the hero of that community in the sense of bringing all those stakeholders, education, businesses, other nonprofits or government entities together to say, hey, we have a talent shortage. So we have a workforce challenge in our area, and we have to work together to be able to solve this. I went back earlier, I mentioned how difficult it is to build out what we call a skills-based economy. And the reason that's so difficult is because you need all those stakeholders to agree to what it means to build out a skills-based economy. You need an employer to say, I'm going to start to put the right skills in my job postings or look for the right skills. And I'm going to start looking at skills more than educational requirements. Then you need educational institutions to say, we need to understand what's being taught in the classroom and ensure that's matching up to labor market demand. And so that's a challenge, because you have professors that have been in those roles for 10, 15, 20 years. And they're like, I've been doing it this way. It works. And I have tenure. I'm good. And so you have to get everybody on the same page to do that. And then from a workforce system standpoint, or anybody that works with job seekers, you have to be able to assess an individual based on the skills they have. It's not enough for them to come in and say, okay, what kind of jobs have you had in the past? Oh, then you probably had these skills. But there has to be a mechanism to be able to assess the individual's skills. And that comes from a variety of areas. It's not just your work experience or educational background. There could be a variety of things that you've done either as a volunteer or in other areas that bring skills to the forefront. I always find it really fascinating. We have a product where our product team works with job seekers we videotape them to see like their process through this application. And what's fascinating about it is take an individual, maybe they're in their early 20s, they haven't had a rich history of job experiences. Maybe they were a cashier or they worked in food service of some sort. And when they go through this process where they're going through this skill selection process based on their experience, there's almost like this eye-opening experience where they go, I didn't realize I had so many skills, because they didn't connect that experience to like these 10, 15 really important skills. You think about a cash rep, somebody working as a cashier, working with customers and cash, handling money, and just the variety of skills that come with that. And it's almost, wow, I have skills. And now I get to see how those transfer into higher paying occupations and industries I didn't think I qualified for. And so it's an interesting process that we as workforce professionals need to understand. How do we assess an individual with skills? The other thing I would say for workforce professionals is in my opinion, the days are gone of the job seeker walking through the front door at a job center. Like that is so rare. We've seen those traffic numbers drop for years. We need to go where those potential job seekers are. It's interesting because we talk a lot about missing workers. That's something that has been coined over the last couple of years. And we're looking at these pockets of people who have historically been disengaged from the labor force. Individuals with disabilities, previously incarcerated, the homeless population, former foster youth. By the way, these are all the populations that are defined in WIOA that we as workforce professionals have been and should have been working with over all these years. So we're already positioned to already work with these population groups. The difference is those populations likely are not walking through our front door. So we need to come up with strategies in the local regions to be able to go out to them, partner with your local Salvation Army that has a homeless program, work with your Voc Rehab in a greater way. Don't just put it on paper because it's a mandated partner, but actually go out and work with them and create programs and opportunities where we can pass off information and share information how to really serve an individual. And so I would really encourage our workforce professionals to really start to look at what are the things that we have been doing that makes us experts in this area. And then how do we go out and actually show our knowledge? How do we help people? How do we assess them and show them they have potential to get really good careers in their local region?
Chris, this has been everything I hoped it would be. It's been so informative. The last thing I want to do is just two things, two-part question. One is I just want to give you the last word to wrap us up. And then also, how can people reach out to you, learn more about you?
Yeah. And I appreciate the opportunity. It's always good to see you guys and the great work that you're doing both at Workforce 180 and at KRA. And so it's a pleasure to be with you guys today. I would say this, and this is similar to the last question, is we put ourselves in a box as workforce professionals a lot of times. It's almost as if we use this piece of legislation. And I know I've said a lot about WIOA, but it's not just that. It also could be any of the other federal workforce programs that we have an opportunity to serve with. And we look at it and we go, okay, I have to check the box on these 10 things, right, to serve this person. And it goes beyond that's like guidance. Like we need to go beyond the 10 things we got to check mark. We really got to figure out how to serve an individual. It's really encouraging to see workforce systems start to look at, and many have been doing it for many years, look at braided funding. How do we get unrestricted dollars so that we can serve anybody that walks through our front doors? America Job Centers historically have not been able to serve certain populations. And now they're looking at programs where they can serve everyone. And so our role as workforce professionals is not just to check the boxes, but how do we actually go and help somebody and serve our community in a greater way? My first boss in the workforce world, our CEO at the workforce board I was at, gave me this advice in my very first week. He had said, how do we create an environment of innovation when you're rewarded for getting the boxes checked? And that really resonated with me. How do we step out of that environment and really look at this and say, how do we solve these very complex problems? I don't want to discount the fact that we are trying to help individuals get skills and try to get them into jobs when they're trying to figure out how to pay rent that was due last week. That's a really complex challenge, right? You're thinking about the things that you have to do right now. And at the same time, we're like, but we got to think about the future. And so it takes a very holistic approach, and it takes workforce professionals to think beyond, again, checking the boxes. So my advice is definitely just think differently about how do we do this work, be creative. Think about it from an industrial engineer's job is to go into a business and rethink processes and how we can do things more efficiently and better. I would use that as the same kind of thing. As a workforce professional, think about how you do things now, still get the things you have to get done because we all have performance goals. But at the same time, how do we truly help people and help them raise the bar and where they're going in life? So that would be my advice. In terms of contacting me, whether it's on LinkedIn or you can reach me at chris.laney@lightcast.io. Just ask somebody, you'll probably be able to find me. But I really enjoyed this conversation, and you guys are doing that. You're part of the ecosystem to make this happen, to make this work happen. It requires all of us, whether you're there on the ground doing the work every day, or where you are a vendor serving through consulting services or whatnot. It takes all of us to be able to really move the needle in the work that we're doing every day.
Again, we appreciate it, Chris. Wonderful content. And I believe that all of our audience, the listeners that are out there today, will gain so much in the work that they're doing. I think inspiration, but also a way of looking at what we're currently facing in today's market. So look forward to connecting with you again in the future, and want to thank all of those that have joined us today on KRA's The Hub podcast. Be sure to join us next time. Look forward to seeing you then. Take care.
Thank you for listening to KRA's The Hub. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. To learn more about KRA Corporation, visit www.kra.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.